Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, joining us. And I was looking to pull up the stats from the football game, Don, from our stats feed. And unfortunately, the Wisconsin stats are not there for me. So
what do you need? I got it. I got some.
I was just going off of memory, but the biggest stat was the one with the points at the end of it, 20-14. Because I know that so many people, biggest fourth quarter crowd of the season, by the way, without question, maybe over the last two seasons. So congratulations to the crowd for staying for this game, because I think everybody could see that. Even I go back to the Ohio State game, and while that one was close at half, very close, they still left at the half. This one, I think those people, they could feel that, wait a minute, this could be real. Indiana could actually win this game against Wisconsin. And they did just that, although that second half offensively was a little dicey, I guess we'll say. 14 yards total offense up until that last drive, but the defense played unbelievable for most of the game. Some forcing turnovers, special teams which has been a disaster other than James Evans, comes through, and Indiana gets 2 penalties for the whole game. One of those was a very crucial penalty, but still only 2 penalties. Indiana played as good as they have played in a long, long time.
Well, in some respects, Jim, I would say that maybe we saw a hint of that coming last week when they played.
Absolutely.
They played very good defensive football last week, with the exception of a couple of plays against Penn State. We saw an inkling of what they looked like at the beginning of the year against Ohio State, against Louisville in the second half of that ball game. We saw a defense that in this contest against Wisconsin seemed to come together again and look like what we anticipated might be the case throughout much of this season. Unfortunately, it didn't quite happen that way. I think that they just had so many new faces on that defensive side of the football that they couldn't quite develop the chemistry that you need, communications and those kinds of things earlier in the year. And it kind of came back against Penn State. And I think it certainly was on display against this Wisconsin ball club on Saturday, because as you pointed out, it was the defense that won this football game. And I will say this about the offense. I thought in the first half, the play calling by Rod Carey was spectacular. I thought the execution for the most part in the first half was really good. The difference in the second half was that Wisconsin made some adjustments. Indiana's offensive line did a poor job of protecting Brendan Sorsby in the second half of this ball game. That kind of had a negative effect on what Indiana was trying to do offensively. And when you only get 36 yards in the second half, the defense better be spectacular, and they flat out were, because everything they needed to do to win that game defensively, they were able to get done. And I was so proud of what we saw from Aaron Casey, the linebacker, sixth-year player at Indiana, who went out and played his heart out. 9 tackles in the game, 7 solo, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble that was critical in the ball game. So when you look at what Indiana's defense did in this contest, it was the defense that won the game, even though the offense did put the points on the scoreboard.
Yeah, and I mentioned special teams. That kind of goes in with the punt unit. James Evans has just been special. He's an NFL prospect, first team Big Ten in my mind. But he had 6 punts on Saturday, 44-yard average, which means he had a couple more 50-yarders. But the coverage was spectacular. They averaged giving up 7 yards a return on all 6 of those kicks. So, but there was one that he kicked that was a 50-yarder, but there was 2 or 3 defenders, I can't remember, that just suffocated the receiver immediately. Have not seen that this season.
Well, there's little question that special teams have been an issue. Penalties have been an issue. They only had 2 in this game, which was really, really good. Um, and they didn't make the mistakes that they've made in some of these other games at critical times. That's probably the biggest thing. They put DeKeith Carter back there to field punts now because they just need somebody to catch the ball, because they've had a couple of muffs and one ball that one that got away for a touchdown, that kind of thing. You just can't have those kinds of things happen. In this game, it didn't. And so what we're looking at is a football team that has a rejuvenation. You can say they're resilient, whatever you want to say. At this juncture, they're starting to play some of their best football. And at this point in the season, they absolutely have to, because they've got 3 games left in which they've got to win all 3 if they're going to have bowl eligibility. And that's what the goal is right now for this football team. And I think you could feel Saturday that this ball club believes that they can get it done. Now, whether they do or not, it's a whole different ball game.
Exactly. And fortunately for Indiana, they have the schedule to do that. They do have to go on the road twice against Illinois, which I think that is now the toughest game remaining on their schedule because it's on the road. Michigan State, although they got to win over Nebraska this weekend, so that's not going to be easy. Michigan State got to win. Purdue is, I'll just say, they're hot garbage, but it doesn't matter. It's Purdue, and it's in West Lafayette, so that's going to be a challenge. So it's going to be a challenging 3-game run, but they definitely are playing with the way they played Penn State, and the defense followed that. Not only the defense, looking over the stats, 9 pass breakups. But not only that, this is a unit that is really hodgepodge patched in right now. You've got freshmen playing because of injuries, and the secondary played pretty damn well over on Saturday. And that, again, is with so many different guys in there.
Well, and again, and I will say this, and this counters a little bit of what we're talking about here. It counters it because Wisconsin was not playing with their starting quarterback, and they didn't have their best running back out there, and they had one of their top receivers out of the ball game as well. So Wisconsin was a little playing left-handed in that sense. But Indiana's dealing with some injuries too. I mean, Cam Camper hasn't played in the last couple of weeks, and I don't know.
Cooper goes out of the game.
And Omar Cooper goes out of this contest. And obviously we lost the Husky and Noel Pierre. Jordan Shaw, a true freshman, comes in, and I think he's the second leading tackler in the ball game. So they are having some people step up. It looks to be more of a team that has coalesced a little bit and gotten stronger because of just the fact that they've been together a longer period of time at this juncture. Because, again, we're looking at a ball club that put together that transfer portal that had 24 players coming into Indiana, of which I think 23 of those guys were expected to play and see playing time this year through the season. And we're in the 2 deep in the early part of the year. So it takes some time to get all of those new faces together and understanding the system and having the communication that you're looking for. It's a process, and it's not an easy process. But I'm going to say this: if Indiana continues to play like they have in the last 2 ball games, they're going to have a chance to win all 3 that they've got left.
And I agree with you. I have in our staff picks at thehoosier.com, I have not picked them to win this year other than the 2 games that they won. I didn't pick them to win in this only because I had it a close game, but I didn't yet have the confidence in the decision-making at critical times during the game, but that did not come to be. So Indiana now with a shot at bowl eligibility, and I promise you that is not something I thought I'd be able to say at this point. Rushing still a problem for Indiana. You mentioned it in the second half, and I saw the same thing. The offensive line, I don't know if it was an adjustment or if they got worn down, but definitely did not perform like they did in the first half. And you look at Indiana had 41 rushing attempts versus the 28 for Wisconsin, but yet the Badgers outrush Indiana by 25 yards. That's something that they've got to get shored up a little bit. Other than that, they just need to do what they've been doing.
Yeah, this is a football team. Like I said, I think the big key right now for this football team is to stay together and just continue the uplift or the upward trend for the offensive side of the football. If they can get that offensive line, because again, I think that's always been the biggest question mark at IU, offensive line play. They've been doing a decent job. They certainly did a nice job in the first half, but they've got to play 40 or 60 minutes of football, and when they're on the field they've got to produce, and thank God for Donovan McCulley of late, because that guy continues to impress me. He's having a spectacular year in some respects. That catch that he made for the touchdown was absolutely unbelievable. So all I can tell you is right now everything's looking up for Indiana football, and hopefully we can say the same thing next week, because if they get beat, we won't be talking about that any longer. Nevertheless, you're still looking at a team that could win a couple more ball games as the season progresses here at the end.